Caroline Crosbie, welcome. How are you?
I'm fabulous, thank you. And I know that it is World Mental Health Day today. So happy World Mental Health Day, Andy.
Coincidence that you're here. I feel like I'm in the presence of royalty, of fame. When I hear all about the amazing things you've done, I feel so blessed to be able to be here. And really, like I always say, to get to ask questions from the selfish reasons of wanting to tap into all the things that you know. And I know your humbleness, but really just so I can learn, but then we can share all these gifts with so many people with the beautiful gift of technology. And I would love to tap into some of that stuff. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, you're born ready, of course. Caroline, thank you so much for taking time. I know that you do so many amazing things. You flew back from.
I was up in a region in Western Australia called the Pilbara.
Oh, wow.
And I flew up for a night to deliver some training on sleep management.
Wow.
And it was a wonderful trip, because living in a busy city, what was really lovely was once I flew up to this tiny little town called Parapadu. The airport is yay big. I jumped into a vehicle and I had a beautiful just a journey in a car on my own along this amazing road with the scenery was stunning. So I felt I was really blessed to have this moment of just quiet time for myself, away from everybody, far from the madding crowd, which was lovely, because a lot of what I do involves, I suppose, stepping into the realm where there's people, there's a lot of energy. So for me to balance my own energy, it's really important that I have moments where I can just kind of be on my own and kind of retreat and I suppose just be in the moment, which I suppose is mindfulness, what we're talking about right now. Wow. So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
I guess what I would love to tap into is, more than anything, this isn't an interview. And that's why, I shared with you, in our last conversation, it's that you have so much to share and so much to give. I've seen it, I've sensed it in the conversations that we always have. And so I wonder what this conversation will be about. That to me is, let's see where this goes. And I have no idea, but I'm excited to know. But I guess maybe love to hear about how you got to where you are today. Like the journey, the story, that's the bit that always fascinates me. Twists and turns. And I know that's not an authentic, fair dinkum Australian accent that you have there, but I think it's slightly refined. So tell me more, as Dominic would say.
Well, tell me more. Well, no, if I talk like this, you'd probably pick up that I'm from a different country. And I'm not wearing, I'm not wearing green for no reason. I'm actually Irish. I was born and bred in Dublin. And I grew up in a beautiful family. I have 7 siblings.
Wow.
So my background, very briefly, I went off to uni and I did clinical psychology. So I'm trained in clinical psychology. And once I'd finished my traineeship, my father suddenly passed away. Right, so it happened really quickly. This was back in 1986, probably before you were born, Andy. But you know what? It was interesting. When they say there's always a gift in a situation, his passing woke me up to life. So I felt beforehand, I was living a comfortable life. I was kind of on a pathway that I felt had been predetermined for me. It was like, this is a good pathway for you. So I just complied, I suppose, and thought, well, this is my future. But as soon as he flatlined, my heart started beating, and I felt that I had to go and discover who I am. So I jumped on a plane and I said, I'll take a trip for 1 year and see where I end up. And my first destination was Tokyo, and I ended up staying there for 2 years. So I ended up ripping up the ticket. And I had a fabulous time in Japan. I was teaching English. I loved it. From there, I went traveling and then ended up in New Zealand just to go and see some greenery, some space. And I think it coincided with St. Patrick's Day at the time. So wow. I I ended up staying there for 8 years, where I met my lovely husband, and we have one son. And while I was there, I actually got trained up in teaching English as a foreign language. So I had a lot of experience working with people from all around the world, multicultural. It was really, really fantastic. But from there, we decided to move back to Australia, or over to Australia, because I hadn't been here before. And I spent some time rearing our son. That was a decision that I made at the time. But also, I kind of decided to go back to where I'd started, which was psychology. And I got back and did a diploma of counseling, which was really fascinating, because on that way, I noticed the word you've used a few times today, Andy, is I want to tap into who you are. I actually discovered tapping while I was doing my counseling diploma. And tapping is it's an energy therapy technique. And you know what? That really, it struck a chord with me. So interestingly enough, while I was going back on this direction, I suddenly turned left, because I discovered this ancient technique, which really kind of revolutionized my life. Because when I left Ireland, I had a crippling fear of public speaking. Now, I mean, you know, you talk about glossophobia, as people are talking about now, saying that it's prevalent, especially in the youth of today. You know, there's so much social anxiety out there. And when it comes to young people looking for jobs, especially in this digital age that we're in, interviews now, people can see you, and often you've got to get up and you've got to stand up and talk in front of people before, you know, they even choose you as a candidate for an interview. So it's a big problem for a lot of people. But for me, mine was so serious that I nearly threw myself off my little moped so that I would break an ankle instead of having to present at a big case conference.
Wow.
So that actually, I had 9 months preparation for this case conference. And I remember it was on the 19th of March, way back. That date is etched in my memory. But I could see where it had sprung from. I'd had a few, I suppose, experiences prior to that where I made a decision that I'm not going to talk. I'm just going to be quiet because it's easier. Yeah. Nobody can actually criticize you if you don't open your mouth. Wow. But I quickly realized that that's not going to get you very far. So I used tapping, this energy therapy technique, to bust through my fears. And it was interesting because look at what I do now. I speak is it's a very big part of my passion and what I do. And so for that reason, tapping, I suppose my tagline for me is to help people tap into well-being, tap into wellness. And the idea there is whilst you're setting goals, you're getting a sense of this is where I want to go. It's about looking at what's holding me back. What are some of the barriers? What are some of the obstacles? And again, it's all about having a toolkit. And one of the tools in my toolkit is actually tapping. So I use that to help people actually break through some of the stuckness that actually holds them back. Wow. And I've got many other tools that I pull out as well on a day-to-day basis. In fact, if I may share, given the day that's in it, I woke up and I said, World Mental Health Day, what am I going to do for my well-being today? So I just sat down and I just did 10 minutes of mindfulness, and it was great. And I just want to share with you, whilst it's a technique that I love, I am definitely not by any manner or means an expert. And I actually giggled to myself because I realized that my head was all over the place this morning. It was flying here, it was flying there. And I actually realized I was able to just rise above it and just look and say, you're all over the place today. But you know what? That's okay. You know, as the Buddha said, let's make friends with this monkey mind that's going backwards and forwards, that's shattering. So I then, ended up in Australia and decided, wow, this is really interesting. Where is it I want to be? What is it I want to do? And I realized that the journey to success in terms of where you want to go and where you want to be and setting goals, it's really important you look at your values first. And I realized, it got me thinking, what is important to me? Because if you try to if you try, it's like trying to build goals is like trying to plant a tree that's got no roots. All you get is one big, one big hurricane and the whole thing will blow over. So I think what's been important for me is every time I want to move forward, I have to check in with what my values are to make sure that I'm actually on the right track. And I think, for people, when it comes to helping people, it's realizing that the journey to success is definitely not it's not linear. It's not a straight line. It's all over the place. And our family, there's one of my brothers. He's a big sailor. He's sailing in the Mediterranean at the moment. His passion is boats, and I grew up on the water as well. And I liken it to just deciding where is it you want to go. Where is that lighthouse? But you got to be brave enough to actually cast off from the shore and just set off on those waters, and know that they're going to pull you all over the place. So if I look at my journey, whilst I had a desire to just travel around the world for 1 year, I cast off from the shore, but I realized that my lighthouse actually changed. And I said, oh, there's another one over there. I think I want to go there instead. Wow. So if you had said to me today on the 10th of October 2019, you'd be living in Perth, Australia, talking to a guy called Andy in Singapore, I would have said, you've got to be kidding me. And I think that's what I love about life. It's that it is ours for the taking and the making if we dare to step into the arena of change.
Wow.
So, that idea of my tagline as well is I want to help keep people airborne. So this idea that it's like you've got your sail, whether you're on a sailing vessel or whether you like hot air ballooning, once you set sail, that wind is going to pull you in directions. So you just need a toolkit to keep you airborne so that you don't sink or you don't lose your sails as you make the journey. So I think it's so important to have a lighthouse, but don't get too fixated on it. Just set it and say, that's where I want to go, and just then figure out, well, how am I going to get there? And just have confidence that you can. And if you're stuck, don't be afraid to put your hand up and ask for help, because that's a big part of being resilient. Is just, this is hard. I can't do this. Wow. So I've been here in Australia for, oh my goodness, over 20 years. And, over the time I've been working with teams, I've been working with individuals, from children, teenagers, adults who are stuck, who are struggling. But I think, again, a key mantra for me, and it's interesting, our son went to Montessori school, and etched on one of the walls was, help me to do it for myself. And I think that is so important, because in the day that we're living in, we talk about VUCA, the world of change. The world is volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, there's ambiguity out there. There's that sense of current, there's winds. You're going to fall into a hole. Whether you stumble in or somebody pushes you in, you've got to figure out, how the hell do I get out of here? And it's about having resilience. It's about having the tools. And if you expect somebody else to get you out of there, you might be waiting in there for a very long time. So it's just giving people those tools, just giving them that awareness that you can do it. It's not necessarily going to be easy, but there will always be a gift. And I think you're a fan of John DeMartini, but when he looks at what are all the negatives that are going on for you right now? And I said, well, there's at least 10 things that are really not working for me in my life. Sit down and come up with 10 positives, because it's really interesting. You will find a positive. So as I look back in my life, I realized that for all of the perceived negatives, there've always been positives. So it's so important to actually realize that, because without equal amounts of support and pressure or challenge, we never grow. So that sense of, I've got to do it for myself, but maybe I need some help along the way. And that's what how I see a big part of my role is helping to point people in the right direction, because we all have the answers. But it's about helping people tap into their why. Because if you don't have a why, the how will never show up.
Beautiful. This is amazing. You know, I love your metaphor of water. And I look back at, there's probably 3 significant times in life where I realized I wasn't in the grand ocean. In Australia, we call it, we're up that creek, you know what it's called?
Yes.
And I didn't have a paddle. And then I realized at some point, the resistance of trying to push against something, all of a sudden I feel like I turned the boat the other way and just went with it. And all of a sudden, which you underpinned in what you just said, values, what's important. Not forcing, not aiming for the lighthouse and realizing it's in the complete wrong direction, but you thought that's where you had to go, just the letting go. So I'm loving that you shared. Caroline, I'd love to understand today, this is, you know, you can tell a lot about a person when you say, what do? You do a lot of things, and you do a lot of amazing things, travel around the world, speaking, coaching, all of the things that you do. Now, why do you do what you do? And, you know, you talk about values. What's most important to you today?
What's most important to me today is feeling that it's just when you've made a difference, when you can see that there's been a little aha moment with somebody that you have sitting in front of you, or you're in a group and all of a sudden you get people are going, oh, wow, I've just got something out of that. I think it's trying to just inspire others, really. Wow. Again, it's whatever I'm interested in, whatever I'm passionate about, and it's finding people who want some of that. It's just about sharing the taste, sharing the flavor, and just when they taste it and they go, God, that actually tastes good, you know. Wow. As they say, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. You know?
And sorry to interject for one moment, but I want to highlight this for everyone listening. This amazing woman is teaching things like, and you know, as she rightfully says, it's not being the expert, yet she has so much knowledge around mindfulness and sharing to inspire others. But you're doing that in like the mining world, right? You know, these are big guys with beards, no judgment, of course. But there must be a stigma, yet here you are just knowing there's people that I can serve. Help us understand that, because that driving North Compass to you is to inspire, to bring that light out. And you're going into environments where maybe that's something that wouldn't be normal. Not saying they're not open, but it wouldn't be the norm. Help us understand that, you know, that environment, you know, you're really, I guess, carving a path out.
But you know, well, first up, Andy, what I've discovered is that you'd be amazed at the number of people in mining, and again, predominantly males. And again, as you say, you know, they're tough guys. As you say, well, beards are quite fashionable at the moment anyway, but you'd be amazed at the number of people who understand mindfulness, who practice mindfulness. There's a technique that I teach called progressive muscle relaxation. You know, it goes back to the 50s. Dr. Herbert Benson, a medical doctor who actually taught this to patients. And you know, it's a stress release technique. And what I realized is, I'll say, has anybody heard of progressive muscle relaxation? You would be surprised at the number of these guys who know about it. They'll say, well, actually, I do, and I've taught it to my kids, and it's really helping them. Even breathing techniques, you know, ancient pranayama yoga breathing techniques. A lot of these guys know about them, and they're coming up saying, well, have you heard of this technique? And I actually learn so much from these people. But I think what is key is being able to go into a space and show empathy. And basically, I suppose it's about building that relationship with people so that those walls come down. And at the end of the day, I think the message is an area that I'm very passionate about as well, is this whole area of sleep. So, you know what, we're all a bit tired. And I think, you know, a lot of these guys will come into a session and they're tired, and it's like, oh, do I have to sit here? But at the end of the day, it's about just setting the stage, setting the scene to light the fire. So they go, actually, this is actually really important. And so that's what puts a joy on my face at the end of the day when they come out saying, wow, I got a lot more out of that than I actually thought, you know. And at the end of the day, as I say, if there are 10 things that you could learn from a session, all you need to do are pick 2 and just go off and just sharpen those skills. Just see, can you work on them for at least 2 months, and you will max out how you feel or what your results are by at least 80%. I mean, that's good old Vilfredo Pareto's 80-20 rule. So if that's answering your question, how do I go into these environments? I love it.
Yeah, and I want to hone in on one thing, because I want to learn. I'm hungry for this, and I know you brought up the, you know, about sleep and the importance of it, the value of it. As Dominic would say, tell me more. Help us understand, what are your beliefs around it? Maybe share some of your knowledge, your learnings, your lessons, what you've understood, and what you've come to say. Maybe this is why it's so important for us as human beings.
Look, it's interesting. I think we are only just waking up, if you pardon the pun, we are waking up to sleep, because sleep is a very, very new science. In fact, only in 2015, scientists, for the first time, they discovered a system in the brain, and they called it the glymphatic system. So it's similar to the lymphatic system. It's how the body clears all the toxins, but they never knew, how does the brain get rid of all the rubbish and the waste and the toxins that actually build up during the day. And they discovered that there's, because technology has improved, they were able to discover that there's a series of pipes in the brain that basically piggyback the blood vessels. And whilst we're sleeping, magic happens in the brain. It's like the street cleaners come in. You know, in big cities at nighttime, these big street cleaners come in and they hose down the streets. Well, your brain gets a big hosing down at nighttime. So whilst the cleaners are in all the cells, throwing all the rubbish bags of toxins into the alleyways, you know, the street cleaners come and they take all the debris and all the rubbish down to the liver for excretion. And it is phenomenal. But you know what? The cleaners need time to do this. And if you basically are not spending enough time sleeping, and the alarm goes off, the cleaners will say, well, we haven't quite finished the job. Look at all the rubbish that's too bad. Well, and so basically what happens is plaque builds up on the brain. So amyloid proteins, tau proteins, plaques build up. And it's the power of sleep that actually clears those. And they've now discovered there is a direct link between plaque buildup on the brain and Alzheimer's disease. So that's just one little piece that is brand new. And it's literally, was only discovered a few years ago. But I believe people, I mean, I was just reading this morning, Jamie Oliver, you know Jamie Oliver, the chef?
Yeah.
Well, he's apparently lost a load of weight in a very short space of time. And you know what, one of the reasons he put down to it, he said, it's not that I'm not eating. He said, I'm sleeping. All right. Now, what's really fascinating is, and he said he's eating more vegetables and he's exercising more. But you know what? It's interesting because sleep is really like the bedrock of health. It's the single most important thing you can do for your mental and physical well-being. It's been coined the Swiss Army knife of life because it fixes everything.
Wow.
But the problem is, while we're sleeping, we don't know, because we're out for the count. We don't never stop to think what is happening in our minds and in our bodies. And I think if we understood the why of sleep, we would give it more priority, because in our busy lives, we're switched on 24/7. Look, there's artificial light everywhere, and we know that melatonin, which is the Dracula of darkness, it's the hormone of darkness that helps to push us down into beautiful deep sleep. Once the lights are on, it says, well, I'm out of here. So a lot of people are busy, and especially with flexible working hours, there's a sense that I'm always on, so I'm always contactable. So people are stressed, they're not able to set boundaries around their lives, and then sleep gets put on the back burner, especially if you're working long days and you're working long shifts. So what I try to teach people is, first and foremost, the why of sleep. You know, to name just a couple of things, it can, if you're interested, it can make you live longer. Andy, it'll make you look more attractive.
Wow.
Yeah, it's good for you, boosting your memory and your creativity. So again, it's understanding the time. Of course, if you understand the types of sleep and the patterns of sleep, magic happens through all of those different stages. But it's really good for it's good for your cardiovascular health, lowers your blood pressure, it protects against diabetes, it protects against cancer and dementia. It's really interesting, you know, it boosts your immune system. You know, so if you want to go and get a vaccine for the flu, for example, if you want to max out on the antibodies that your body is going to make to fight off the flu virus, you've got to make sure you have a good 7 days of good sleep before you get the vaccine, so that you can literally milk it for what it's worth. These are things people aren't often commonly aware of. It fights against stress, anxiety, depression. It's really good for your mental well-being. It's like having your own little psychologist on tap at nighttime when you're dreaming, which helps you with all the little troubles of the day. I liken to, it's like taking all these rocks that are in your life, you throw them into this crusher, and the brain releases all these lovely neurochemicals which kind of make you feel chilled. So you wake up in the morning, that rock is just like a little pile of dirt, and you go, well, I can deal with that, you know. So sleep, as you can see, I am quite interested in it, because you know what, in 2017 it cost the Australian economy $67 billion through the fallout of people not sleeping. The ripple effect is actually phenomenal. So in terms of peak performance, if you want to perform at your best, if you want to be sharp, you want to be able to get into that zone, you want to be, and again, if we look at the VUCA world we're in, we've got to be creative. We've got to be innovative. We cannot afford to sit still. And creativity is born through dream sleep. So, you know, there's lots of things that we do in our daily life. This is you know, a cup of coffee. Too many of these will interfere with your REM sleep, as will too many alcoholic drinks. And again, a lot of people will resort to alcohol when they're stressed, and other drugs just to help them kind of chill. But it actually destroys the sleep architecture, which really is what you need. Now, going back to Jamie Oliver, you say, well, how could sleep help him? Well, if you want to lose weight, or you want to build muscle, if you're not getting sleep, you'll never, well, it's going to be really hard to lose weight, and it's going to be really hard to build muscle, because the cleaners in your system while you're sleeping, they're balancing all your hormones. And there's a couple of hormones that regulate your appetite. So when you wake up in the morning, if you're nicely balanced, you'll go to the kitchen and you'll pull out from the fridge some really good, nutritious, healthy food. And you'll also stop eating when you're full. So all is well. But when you're sleep deprived, they go out of whack, because the cleaners haven't had enough time to fill up the buckets, right? They're only half full. So you wake up in the morning and it's like turning into Homer Simpson. It's just, you know, you want donuts. And of course you keep eating because you're not even aware that you're full. So it's absolutely fascinating.
Wow. You know what, Caroline? I wish I had this information when I was in high school and fell asleep in class and got scolded and woken up because I'd fallen asleep in class. Imagine if I came back with this. Now, sir, you don't understand how important sleep is. It's wonderful. And I totally agree. I mean, we all know when we've had a crap night's sleep that it doesn't really set us up well for the day. Now, I guess when it comes to that, how is it that you're able to share the importance? You know, what is it that you really highlight? I guess, what's your key message? If you had a one tagline about sleep, what would it be?
Peak performance. I think for me, it's understanding the secrets of sleep.
Yeah.
Right. And they have been secrets for a very, very long time. If you don't understand the why of sleep, it's like a bottle. If you look, imagine this container here, and you know, you need to drink all of this. Scientists have discovered this fabulous new treatment which will revolutionize your life, your health and well-being, but you got to drink the whole cup every day. Now, it's like, if you don't understand why this is important, you might just take a few sips and say, well, that's enough. I've kind of quenched my thirst. But all of the things that I talked to you about, living longer, having better memory, creativity, fighting against cancer, dementia, boosting, all of those things, you need to drink the full cup. So if you're only going to drink half of the cup, you're only going to get half the benefits. And there's a big link between the number of years that you live and the amount of sleep that you do. There's a reason we do what we do. And also, you know, at the end of the day, it's about safety. More people, I suppose, if you ask somebody what's more dangerous, is it driving drunk or driving drowsy? What do you reckon? Most people would probably say, oh, driving drunk, because we talk about drink driving. It's a no-no. And
it's brought home, right? In the
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you'd be surprised at the number of people who are actually driving drunk, but they haven't had any alcohol. They've been awake for far too long. So basically, the body is designed to be awake for about 16 hours, and then literally it starts to shut down. So what's happening from the moment you wake up, there's a chemical in the brain called adenosine, which is the sleepy chemical, and it builds and builds and builds like an avalanche. And you know what? Especially people who are busy, too busy working, they say, I can hold back this avalanche. I'm really strong. I've got muscles. But unfortunately, that avalanche gets the better of them. And it literally just drops its load, and people have microsleeps. And there are a lot of people dying on the roads. In America, every hour a person is dying on the roads through basically fatigue and lack of sleep. So I think we need to, you know, I suppose it's taking sleep off the back burner and we can't make more time. We all have 86,400 seconds every day. So, you know, people, if you ask most people, they just, oh, well, I'm busy. I've got all of these commitments. I got my work, I got my family, and then there's sleep. So I think it's if people don't understand the why of sleep, they'll never move it off the back burner to just put a little bit more in the tank so that they can say, this is the size of my tank. Somebody else might have a different size tank, but you need to make sure you're filling it if you want to have that energy, that mental power, the physical power to do all of those wonderful things that you need to do. So for me, I have dropped my standards in terms of housekeeping. I don't mind if there's a bit of dust around the place. I just don't want there to be dust and grime in the crevices of my brain. And it's about protecting yourself so that you can actually be at your best. But I'm not saying that it's easy. And I think it's because we're not aware of what's going on when we're asleep. We don't really give it any priority. So my desire is to wake people up to the power of sleep and the importance of sleep.
Wow. And when you hear of a lot of European countries, I mean, and China as an example, we ran a workshop in China and we had to allocate a 2-hour lunch break. And I thought, wow, 2 hours, they must eat well, but it was the opposite. It was literally they have something to eat and they slept for that entire 2 hours. And then we get back into it. So they work a little later, but that's at an organizational level. That's something that's embodied culturally where people sleep during the day. What would be your vision? You know, in an ideal world, knowing beautiful place, Australia, Singapore, as you know, very busy place. What would be your, you know, I guess what would you love to see in the way of your message? What you want to see more?
I would love to see organizations, and some of the bigger organizations like Google are starting to do this. They realize that we are not all equal. So in terms of our sleep needs, our chronotype, now that is to say whether you are you a morning person, are you an early morning bird, or are you a night owl? So about 25% of the population are night owls, about 25 are early morning larks, and 50-50 are 50-50. And this is part genetically determined. So if you want creativity and you want innovation, and you've got some night owls that have to be in work early in the morning, they're not even awake at that hour. So for them to actually, they don't wake up till maybe their brain doesn't kick in till maybe 11 o'clock in the morning. So what they are doing is designing workplaces whereby they actually respect a person's chronotype. So the night owls can come in later and leave later, because that's when they often get inspired, is in the wee small hours of the morning. So isn't it a shame to actually just deprive your people of actually being at their best? And in the same way, people who really, who work well in the morning, they start work early. So they have a crossover period where they'll decide when is the best time for us as a as a company to have our meetings.
Wow.
But the idea of having, I suppose, that siesta time in the daytime it makes sense in terms of our biorhythms, because we do come off the boil between, let's say, 1 and 4 p.m. So if you're trying to structure meetings, high-powered meetings where you've got to make really important critical decisions, lunchtime is not the time to do that. Because what happens is all the alerting chemicals that actually wake you up in the morning, they pull back, they come off the boil, and your body temperature, your core body temperature drops, which gives you a signal to go to sleep. And that comes back to the days when, you know, we were out there hunting, you know, the animals, the hottest time of the day, sun is high, the animals are sleeping. I can put my spear down and I can sleep and all is well. So we are actually hardwired to actually dip after lunch, and it's not necessarily to do with what you're eating. So if you're going to eat a big lunch, that obviously will help to push you into that little hole a bit further. But I think we need to design work practices where people can actually have a power nap. They can have a nappuccino if they need to, which means, you know, if they are busy and there's a deadline, there is a nice place where they can actually put their head down for maximum 20 minutes, but have that caffeine beverage beforehand, because it takes about 15-20 minutes to reach peak plasma to get up to your brain, by which time you've had that nap, whereby you've got rid of some of those chemicals that are making you feel sleepy. So now you're good to go. So I think we've got to be more flexible with how we do things. Yeah, definitely.
So it sounds like obviously companies are becoming more open. I guess your experience in Australia, I mean, when you have statistics that come out, unfortunately, it always seems to be, you know, there's a big monetary cost that means people wake up. Yeah, then we have companies that have started to embrace it. What are you noticing? You know, is it that they're becoming more aware? You know, where are we at in the, you know?
Slowly.
Okay.
I think everything starts with education. It starts with awareness. And whilst people are aware, there are still lots of companies where it's all about productivity. It's all about bottom line results. It's about the dollar at the end of the day. So people are being pushed to the max. And again, there's fear. People are afraid in this age of uncertainty, you know. Basically, people get retrenched. And there's, you know, if we look at the past few years, you know, a lot of people have been let go from various positions. So they are afraid to, I suppose, make choices that might be better for them, because there are a lot of people who are working long hours, very long hours, which does not, and they'll attend a session and they learn about sleep and they go, but why are we doing this? If we could be more productive, if we worked fewer hours, but we had more sleep to boost our performance, it kind of doesn't make sense. So I think we've got to reach a tipping point in terms of waking people up, so that people can then make conscious choices and say, well, I don't think this is necessarily going to be good for me and my health down the track. But as long as there's fear, and there's a fear of job loss, it will hold people in that space, but it can make them a little bit disgruntled, because on the one hand, they say, well, if we know this is not good for us, why are we doing it? But I'm doing it. And, you know, and that can just cause rumbles, and it can help people fall a little bit victim. You know, earlier on, we talked about, you know, you were talking about going upstream with a paddle. I think the analogy of using an oar is really important, because sometimes if you throw people into a situation, somebody who feels hard done by will play the victim, and they'll say, well, yeah, you want me to get to that lighthouse, but you haven't given me anything to paddle with. Mm-hmm. So they'll say, I want to get there, but there's nothing I can do about it. It's your fault. So if you look at living above or below this line, they tend to, they fall into bed, and that's an acronym. They blame others, they make excuses, that's the E, and they deny that there's an issue, or they deny that they have anything to do with it. But for those people who are resilient, it's about realizing, I did make a choice. This is free will. I've chosen to be in this position. Yes, I've fallen into a hole, but that person they'll say, well, I don't have an oar, but you know what they'll do? They'll probably dig into their pockets and they might find 3 pens, right? And they'll try to join them up, right? And they'll try to say, well, it's not fabulous, but at least they're in a better position to turn around and face the direction. So the OAR, the oar that's going to help propel them, is these people take ownership for where they're at, and they're accountable for their actions, and they take responsibility. And I think that's key to being resilient whilst you are negotiating change, whether it's at any level, personal level, family level, organizational level. But we're at an interesting time. As I said, I think we're at the beginning. It's a sense of genesis, but so many people have no idea that sleep is so important for them. And then after a session, they go, I didn't know that. And you know, it's really interesting. They then say, actually, I can share this stuff with my family as well. And especially if they've got teenagers, if they've got kids who are doing exams, man, you know, pulling the all-nighter is not good for your memory. You're better off to have good sleep. So, and there's loads of reasons for that, which I won't go into right now. But
yeah,
I don't know if I answered your question.
Oh, this is so insightful. I'm fascinated. So maybe if you were to share some key tips, you know, we have some people listening in and say, you know, that's great, but my work is busy. And Caroline, one of the things that was absolutely amazing for me moving to Singapore from Perth, I love going back because it's when I go back to Perth, it's not like I feel like it slows down. It feels like it stops compared to Singapore. You know, like literally 4:45 and the shop's closing. They're already getting me out of the door because 5 o'clock's done. Sunday, very family time. So I remember when I first moved here getting WhatsApp messages at like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, because people, that's the time when they finally get to do it. And I started to think, wow, like this is the norm here. And so I know, you know, in Australia, there's people doing the same. Singapore by nature, you know, it's a very driven culture. So there's people sitting here that are experiencing this. What would be your advice? You know, how do you take ownership, as you said, when, you know, maybe the workplace, we can't change there now until, you know, they get Caroline in to run a wonderful piece to help, you know, the broader organization see. What would be your advice to individuals of what they can do?
I think it's important to just map out your life in the sense of, because you can get caught up in the treadmill of life, and you wake up, the alarm goes off, and it's, you know, the Groundhog Day. It's like, oh my God, and you're on that hammy wheel. I think it's important to, that's me putting the brakes on. You got to put the brakes on and look in the mirror. Just take a moment to look in the mirror and just say, how am I doing? Am I okay or not okay? And if you're not okay, say, well, what can I do? So it's about taking stock. And you know what, and it's about looking at the areas of your life and thinking, well, how am I going on those different areas of my life? And it's like, you know, you talk about the wheel of life. I even look at it as like rays of sunshine, because the wheel is not finite, it's infinite. And if you look at what is important to you, and you've got your work, you've got your family, you've got me time, you've got relationships, you've got all of these spokes on your wheel, it's really important to stop and just literally see, how am I doing on each of those spokes? And it's not about being, let's say 10 is fabulous. It's not about being a 10. It's okay to be a 2 or a 3 if you realize that you're a 2 or a 3. So in other words, you'll never change what you do unless you stop, look in the mirror, take stock. Once you realize that you say, oh, I'm running a bit ragged, my tank is empty. It's then about just literally making just 1 or 2 simple decisions. And remember the word to decide. Words ending in CIDE means to kill off. Right? So once you make that decision, it means that's it, the other options are gone. And it's about making some decisions. And a decision might be to start saying no to things. Yeah. All right. So again, I interestingly enough, given that today is World Mental Health Day, I was walking through a reception area a guest house the other day, and they invited all the guests to take a post-it note and to make a promise to themselves, to just write up, what do I promise to do to myself just to boost my well-being? Because at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about, the busyness of life. How well do I manage stress? And, you know, I looked at them, and it was interesting. One person wrote, I'm going to just try not to take on more that I can do. So it's about actually being able to start saying no. So it might be, if somebody's living, as you say, in Singapore, it's busy, busy, busy. You know, if you don't decide what is important to you, you'll never be able to figure out how to just bring in a little chink of light where you can take a breath. And actually, one of those tools might be bringing a little bit of mindfulness into your day, which you can do on the move. You know, incorporating the idea of the third space, for example. So when you go from space 1, which is meeting number 1, and you've got to go up to the 76th floor because there's another busy meeting and it's got to do with something different. How do you tie up the loose ends on space 1, where you've just come from, where perhaps you've had to performance manage somebody, to discussing, you know, how you're going to, what you're going to do with the funds for next year. And you maybe have some people in the room who are a little bit challenging to deal with. So it's about being able to clear up as you are going in the elevator, deal with space 1, let it go, take a moment to literally take stock, come into self. And this is where mindfulness comes in. And then look forwards to see, how do I want to show up when I get into this meeting? Who do I want to be? How do I want to hold myself? What emotions do I want to show? What about my behaviors? So that you're in a space to be able to respond rather than react. So it's about, I suppose, you can't slow down the pace of life, but you can actually punctuate it with some magic along the way. So it's about knowing, what are these tools that I can use so that I can keep my tank full as I move and groove through the busyness of life. And sometimes, it might be saying no. I can't say no. What are people going to think of me? And then there's all this irrational thinking. So it's teaching people how to work out, how do I actually look at my faulty thinking and think, is my thinking serving me? Because a lot of the time we fall into default patterns of behavior that are not necessarily serving us. So it's about, again, looking and taking stock to see, what am I doing? And, you know, could I be doing something differently? Could I be acting, behaving in a different way? And it all comes back to thinking. Wow. You cannot slow down the pace of life, but I think it's how you go with the flow. And you talked about that before, Andy. It's about being able to make friends with the flow. You know, it's not surrendering completely, but it's saying, I can do this. And this is life. This is the world that we're living in. But how can I do it so that I can stay buoyant? And it's just, as I said, having some tips and tools along the way to actually enable you to just at the end of the day go, that was a good day, you know, and I wasn't in the hammy wheel. I actually, because you know what, 95% of our thoughts, we're on a playlist. You know, we have about 60,000 thoughts every day. About a good whopping 95% of them are thoughts we had yesterday, and we're probably going to have them tomorrow. So it's like, really? And what percentage of those tend to be positive? Well, it's not very high, you know. So it's about thinking, you know, and this is where people, they just end up just kind of mulling over stuff, and that can actually help to bring them down. So yeah, it's how can I, it's like swimming with a wetsuit, right? You know how in the old days, people put on their swimming trunks and they get into the water, or the same with cyclists. Now it's like, if you look at the helmets, they're streamlined. They put on this amazing, you know, clothing so that they can move and groove through the water, like sharks or like dolphins. You know, they got this beautiful skin on. What can we do to put a skin on so that we can go with the current and go with the flow without ruffling too many feathers?
Yeah, that's amazing advice. I just got to say too, your use of metaphors and the way you bring home this message is just wonderful. Like I'm in awe of hearing you share. It's wonderful. One thing I am very conscious of is time, and this is, can you believe an hour's gone? It's amazing. Yeah, it's incredible.
And I think I've hogged the conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, for everyone listening, here's what's amazing. Carol said, I have no idea what I'm going to share. Now, here we are. I just so much, and I will remind you that it's wisdom for us. And I know you're very humble in sharing that you're still in practice. We all are, work in progress. I guess I'd love to ask one final question. And this is Dom's question he asked to me, so I want to pass that gift on to you. Tim Ferriss asked in one of his podcasts, which I love, and he shares and asks a lot of his guests, and that is, if there's a billboard when everybody's driving, stressed, right? Lack of sleep the night before, and they're driving and they're stopped in standstill traffic, and there is this beautiful picture of Caroline Crosbie there, and it has something, can be a word, a sentence, a phrase. What would it say that sends this message to the world? What would that message be?
That's a great question, and
I won't take credit for it.
I listen to Tim Ferriss's podcasts, and I've got his book Tribe of Mentors. I'm looking at it right now, and I thought, wow, that is a great question. Right. You know what's come up just right now in relation to our conversation, but it's not necessarily. It could have different connotations, but it's going with the flow. Go with the flow, but there's that sense of ease, peace, joy. Wow. But obviously you've got to learn how to go with the flow, because life is always flowing. There was a famous Greek philosopher called Heraclitus who said one line in my philosophy lecture back in the day. The only thing I ever remembered from that lecture was, you can never step into the same river twice, because it's always flowing. So every day expect change. And just know that if you dam up a river, the water becomes stagnant and things start to die. So just go with the flow. Don't be courageous. And that comes from the word cour, meaning heart, the old French word. So trust your heart and just go with the flow, because we all have what it takes. We just need to unlock some of those secrets within, I think.
Wow. Yeah. I think we better rent you some billboard space over there in Perth, Western Australia. That's amazing. Wow.
Thanks,
Caroline,
Andy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to watch this back, and I can't wait to share it with the world as well, because you really, really have a presence about you that is so genuine and sincere. And what I love in every conversation I have, it's, as you said before, and so clearly and rightfully so, it's that people have the answers, right? You're sharing, and I'm here thinking, in my head about what I'm taking on and bringing reference. And that to me is true wisdom, because true wisdom is never perfection, right? And you are sharing it from the place of serving without having all the answers and learning from. That's so humbling, and you learn from others. So I don't know what else to say other than thank you. I really respect and appreciate the fact you've taken an hour out of your schedule to come and spend some time with us.
It's been lovely. Wonderful, Andy. Yeah.
Wonderful. Any final words? Anything you want to say? Anything at all?
I think just remember that today is about looking in the mirror. So just go out there and the World Health Organization, they say mental well-being, and people think about mental health and they think of all the words to do with disorder, right? But they have 4 pillars, and they're guiding lights, really, as you're setting out on that journey. And it's do what you love to do, tap into your passions, tap into your strengths, and people who have that sense of well-being are able to do that. And if you can't do it in paid employment, make sure you're doing it after work somewhere. Do something that gives you joy. But also you've got to be able to basically go with the flow of life, and be able to cope with the stresses that come with that. So be mindful of that. So if you trip up today, just know, well, great, it's life. Yeah. And the third thing is do work that's productive, but it's fruitful. Have some goals. Don't just fall into that little hammy wheel and go, it's just another day in paradise. Not. So have a sense of direction, even though that may change. And the last thing, do something for somebody else. Do something that's going to contribute to their life. So go out there and just smile at somebody and say, how's it going? with an authentic, genuine smile. And I think that if you can do one of those things today, or just even give somebody a smile, I think it'll put a stamp on this day, because it is a very important one.
Wow. Now I can tell you've lived in Australia for that many years, because I heard the how's it going. Wonderful.
Oh, really?
Caroline Crosbie, absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. We now share this with the world. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
All the best. Have a great day.
And
See ya.
you too. Bye-bye.